Good day. Pag-usapan natin ngayon yung Republic Act number 11479. So ito yung Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020. So ano ba yung pumapasok natin sa isip natin pagka sinabi natin yung word na terrorism? So commonly, ang magiging perception ng isang tao pagka sinabing terrorism is violence. Pero pag-aralan natin kung ano nga ba yung Anti-Terrorism Act. So, an act to prevent, prohibit, and penalize terrorism, thereby repealing Republic Act number 9372, otherwise known as the Human Security Act of 2007. So, yung Anti-Terrorism Act, na-sign siya noong July 3, 2020. So, recent lang tong revision na to. Kasi ang nag-sign ito is our current president, which is President Rodrigo Duterte. So, nag-take effect siya noong July 18, 2020. So, ano ba yung Anti-Terrorism Act na to? So, it gives emphasis on the protection in life, liberty, and property from terrorism to condemn terrorism as inimical and dangerous to the national security of the country and to the welfare of the people, and to make terrorism a crime against the Filipino people, against humanity, and against the law of the nation. So again, yung word na terrorism nandyan. So terrorism is any act of violence, engages in acts intended to cause death or seriously injure any parts of the body or any person or endanger a person's life. So ano pa yung mga kinds ng terrorism? So engages in acts intended to cause extensive damage or destruction to a government or public facility, places, or private property. So hindi lang sa tao pwede meron terrorism, pwede rin sa mga property or non-living things. Engages in acts intended to cause extensive interference with, damage, or destruction to critical infrastructure. So again, property. So hindi lang basta sa tao yung nadadamage ng terrorism. Develops, manufactures, possesses, acquires, transports, supplies, or use weapons, explosive, or of biological, nuclear, radiological, or chemical weapons. So, kahit hindi ikaw yung mismong gumagamit ng mga supplies or weapons na ginagamit sa act of terrorism, so isang act na yung gumawa ka or mag-develop ka, mag-manufacture ka, magkaroon ka, or kahit simpleng ikaw lang yung delivery, transport ng mga supplies na yan, is also already considered an act of terrorism. Release of dangerous substance or causing fire, floods, or explosion. Again, papasok dito yung magkakaroon ng damage to anything, person, place, property. Is considered terrorism. Terrorism, as defined in this section, shall not include advocacy, protest, dissent, stoppage of work, industrial or mass action, and others similar to exercise of civil and political rights, which are not intended to cause death or serious physical harm to person, to endanger a person's life, or to create a serious risk to public safety. So, hindi considered na terrorism yung let's say mag-protest ka. So, yung mga karamihan ng binanggit dito is a form of expressing your opinion or trying to fight for your right. So, as long as walang serious physical harm, death to any person, or mag-risk ng public safety, damage to property. So, hindi defined na terrorism yung mga gantong acts. Person who planting, training, preparing, and facilitating the commission of terrorism, who create or spread a message of fear, recruit, incite, participate, and support terrorism shall be guilty of committing terrorism and shall suffer the penalty of life imprisonment without the benefit of parole and the benefit of Republic Act number 10592, otherwise known as an act amending Articles 29, 94, 97, 98, and 99 of Act number 3815, as amended otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code. So, person who are planting, training, balik natin, napindot ko na naman. and facilitating the commission of terrorism. So kahit mag-spread ka lang ng fear, message, mag-recruit ka, guilty ka na ng terrorism. So ano yung parusa sa kanila? So life imprisonment without the benefit of parole. So yung parole is from what I've searched is nababawasan yung years of sentence mo or maybe just months kapag ka, may parole ka. So wala rin yung benefit ng Republic Act number 100592. Ano ba yung article 10592 pala, sorry. 10592. So ano-ano yung mga article na na-amend nun? So articles 29, 94, 97, 98, 99. So mamaya matatagal natin yung mga article na yan. So the law punishes the following offenses with 12 years of imprisonment. So itong mga following offenses na to, 12 years of imprisonment na to. Section number 5, sinasabi, threat to commit terrorism, any person who shall threaten to commit any acts of the mentioned in Section 4. Ano ba yung Section 4? So binanggit kanina sa atin kung ano-ano yung mga klase ng terrorism. So ito nga siya, um, kung ano yung makakapag-define sa terrorism. So mag-threaten ka lang na gawin mo yung any type of terrorism kahit hindi mo naman talaga gawin. So pwede ka nang makulong ng 12 years. Section 8, proposal to commit terrorism. Any person who proposes to commit terrorism as defined in Section 4. So mag-propose ka lang na gagawin mo to. Let's say, bobombahin mo yung munisipyo. So although hindi pong panganay nagagawa, you're still not engaged in the act of terrorism directly, offense pa rin siya na pasok doon sa 12 years of imprisonment. Section 9, sorry, palipat-lipat. Inciting to commit terrorism. Any person who, without taking any direct part in the commission of terrorism, shall incite others to execution of any act specified in Section 4. Here by means of speech, proclamation, writings, emblems, banners, or other representation tending to the same end. So again, kahit hindi ka directly gumagawa ng na-mention na acts of terrorism, so any representation tending to the same end will result in 12 years of imprisonment. The law also punishes the following offense with 10 years. Ito 10 years naman, although mas mababa, 10 years still a long time. Section 20, custody of intercepted and recorded communication. Any person deletes, expunges, incinerates, shreds, or destroys the tape, disk, or other storage devices, recordings, notes, memoranda, summaries, excerpts, and all copies thereof, to remove, delete, expunge, incinerate, shred, or destroy in any matter the items enumerated above, in whole, part, under any pretext whatsoever. So, yung mga, let's say, evidence, any person or evidence na in connection with acts of terrorism, any person who deletes, expunges, mentioned na kanina, kung naman yung mga ginagawa nila na para masira or para mawala or mawala yung mga evidence na yun. So, will result in 10 years of imprisonment. Section 21, contents of joint affidavit. The law enforcement agent or military personnel shall state the number of tape disc recording that have been covered by each date's times covered by each such tape disc and recording, and the chain of custody on the list of the person who had possession or custody over the tapes, disc recordings. The joint affidavit shall also certify under oath that no duplicates or copies of the whole or any part of the tape, disc, or other storage devices, recordings, notes, memoranda, and summaries. So yung law enforcement agent or military personnel, let's say yung tao na nangangalaga doon sa mga recordings na yun, doon sa information na yun. So, kailangan i-state nila kung ilan yung meron sila. Kung ano na yung mga date, time na na-cover ng mga evidence na yun. Kailangan stated siya ng law enforcement agent or military personnel. Also, mangangako sila under oath na walang duplicate or copies of the said evidence or recordings or any documents na kanilang na-obtain. Section 22. Disposition of deposited materials. Any materials mentioned in Section 20, if that was in sealed envelope or sealed package, shall not be opened or disclosed. So very self-explanatory. Hindi pwedeng buksan ang kahit sino. Resulting pa rin siya dun sa, again, 10 years of imprisonment kapag ginawa mo yan. So, unless authorized siya or written order na from the Department of Justice, duly authorized in writing by the ATC to file the application or proper written notice to the person whose conversation, communication, message, discussion, or spoken or written have been the subject of surveillance, monitoring, recording, and interception to open, reveal, divulge, and use the content of the sealed envelope or sealed package as evidence. It shall be clearly state the purpose or the reason to open the sealed envelope or sealed package. So, kailangan may writing ng ATC. Una, sa Department of Justice, you should have a written application requesting na bubuksan nga yung mga evidence na yun. So, it should be stated then. Hindi pwedeng basta request lang na bubuksan po namin ng evidence na to, kailangan po namin. So, you have to state the reason. Let's say for a hearing, you have to open the recordings or the documents to provide information para sa mga hearing, to provide proof regarding sa hearing. So, isang example yun. Kung ng reason para buksan yung sealed envelope or sealed package that contains the evidence. Section 24. So, bago tayo mag-continue Section 24. So, again, yung Section 22, failure to comply to that law will result to 10 years of imprisonment as well. So again, Section 24, unauthorized or malicious interpretations and or recording. Any law enforcement or military personnel conducts surveillance activity without valid judicial authorization. So hindi pwedeng basta mag-conduct ng surveillance activity. Surveillance activity meaning yung binabantayan, yung minamanmanan. So, hindi porket na pagtripan lang ng any military personnel, law enforcement, let's say PNP or the Army, pagmanmanan ka nang without any valid judicial authorization. So, kailangan may authorization yun. So, kapag labag mo yun, so again, papasok pa rin siya dun sa 10 years of imprisonment. Punta tayo dun sa surveillance and detention. So ano ba yung mga rules or mga laws under na makasasakop sa surveillance and detention. According to Section 16 up to Section 20, the suspected individuals can be spied on the government by monitoring their calls and message for 60 days upon the court order of the court appeals. So once requested or approved by the government, kaya pati yung mga tawag and messages mo, pwedeng i-monitor ng government. Up to 6 days siya. Pwede ko siyang ma-extend another 30 days if may be extended for another 30 days with a person in question being informed after the fact. So this time, yung 30 days na yon, yung person in question, no, yung let's say akusado, being informed na sila ng after the fact. So under this new law, the suspected individuals can detain in between 14 days up to 24 days without a warrant of arrest. So especially if they are caught in the act. So kahit walang warrant of arrest, pwede silang ma-detain. So ang time frame, 14 days up to 24 days lang naman. So immediately after taking custody of a person suspected of committing terrorism, defined in section 4, 5, 6, up to 12. So yung mga binanggit kanina, of this act, any member of the group of the person, organization, or association prescribed under section 26 here of the law enforcement agent or military personnel shall notify in writing the judge of the court nearest the place of apprehension or arrest the following facts. So kailangan yung pinakamalapit na place of apprehension or arrest, kailangan state nila yung mga facts na to. Hindi pwedeng wala kapag may kinuha sila or may dinetain sila without a warrant. So ano-ano yon? The time, date, and manner of arrest. Oras, date, tas kung paano yung aresto. Dinala ba sa patrol or direktang binitbit lang nila or maybe naglakad sila. So although I don't think that's possible, but the point is kailangan recorded din kung paano siya na-aresto. Location of the detained suspects. So, kailangan nakalagay din doon kung saan. Nakakulong ba sa Muntinlupa? Nakakulong ba sa may barangay ng San Pablo? And the physical and mental condition of the detained suspects. Physical condition. So, with regards to his health. So, nakalagay doon kung ano ba, putol na ba yung kamay, putol na ba yung paa, so, may tama ba sa ulo. Mental condition, may tama sa ulo mentally. Baka mamaya nababaliw na pala doon. Or let's say under the influence of drugs. So mental condition, it can be described as a mental condition as well. The law enforcement agent or military personnel shall furnish the Anti-Terrorism Council, which is the ATC, and the Commission on Human Rights of the written notice given to the judge. So yung mga written notice na yun, na binanggit natin kanina. So, kailangan meron din yung ATC at Commission of Human Rights. The head of the detaining facility shall ensure that the detained suspect is informed his or her rights as detainee and shall ensure access to the detainee by his or her counsel or agencies and entities authorized by the law to exercise visitorial powers over detention facilities. So, hindi pwedeng hindi sasabihin dun sa detained suspect, dun sa akusado, yung mga rights niya. So, kailangan may access din yung detainee or again, yung akusado sa council or agencies authorized by the law to exercise visitorial powers over detention facilities. So, yung akusado, let's say, mostly ang mga pwedeng dumalo dyan is family or posibleng dumalo is family or maybe a lawyer. Diba? So, kailangan inform sila ng rights nila na para ma-exercise nila yung visitorial powers na. So, magamit nila yung karapatan nila na meron ng dumalaw sa kanila. Makausap nila doon sa detention facility. The penalty of imprisonment of 10 years shall be imposed upon the police or law enforcement agent or military personnel who fails to notify any judge as provided in the preceding paragraph. So any information na hindi ma-provide nung police or law enforcement agent or military personnel, any dun sa may information na binanggit na kanina na kailangan provide sa judge, sa ATC, sa Commission on Human Rights. So if they fail to provide that, so they maybe makakasuhan sila or mapapatawan sila ng imprisonment of 10 years. Next is under of Human Security Act, a warrantless arrest must be the result of prior surveillance if the subject is caught in the act. So binanggit ko na kanina yung caught in the act. So yung warrantless arrest, pwede lang kapag caught in the act. Huli mo sa akto na ginagawa niya. So may it be by surveillance, let's say na-authorize na ang surveillance para sa isang akusado and caught in the act. Mostly yung mga ganito, mapapanood natin sa balita, may mga marked money para dun sa mga drug users. So, caught in the act of selling drugs, kitang-kita dun sa marked money. So, before that, they're under surveillance na, kaya nga nabantayan or na set up para sa marked money. So, kahit walang warrant of arrest, pwede na silang arrestuin agad. Again, yung mga nabanggit kanina, yung between 14 days up to 24 days. Section 30, rights of a person under custodial detention. If the person charged or suspected of committing any form of terrorism under this act apprehended or arrested and detained, he or she shall forthwith be informed by arresting the law of enforcement agent or military personnel to whose custody the person concerned is brought of his or her. If the person cannot afford the service of his or her choice, the law enforcement agent or military personnel shall immediately contact the free legal assistance of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, IBP, or PAO, Public Attorney's Office. So, nabanggit to sa human rights although hindi na natin tatakil ng sobra ngayon. So, everyone has the right um, sa law, which is, yun nga, pwede sila or they have the right to defend themselves in the court of law. So, kailangan sa hearing, syempre, hindi naman pwedeng ikaw yung mismo magde-defend sa sarili mo, kailangan mo ng attorney. If they cannot afford it, nandyan yung public attorney's office. So, mag-assign sila ng public attorney para maging lawyer mo sa kaso mo. These rights cannot be waived except in writing in the presence of his or her counsel choice. So, itong mga rights na to na babanggitin natin kasunod, it cannot be waived except in writing in the presence of his or her counsel choice. Number one is inform of the cause or causes of his or her detention in the presence of legal counsel. Allowed to communicate freely with his or her legal counsel and to confirm with them at any time without restriction. Allowed to communicate freely and privately restriction with member of his or her family or his or her nearest relatives to be visited by them, and allowed freely avail of service of a physician of choice. So lahat to, hindi pwedeng ma-waive. So, provided agad to doon sa mga detained na mentioned kanina. Section 31, violation of the rights of a detainee. So ito na, again, yung mga sumusunod, yung mga karapatan naman ng mga akusado. So any law enforcement or military personnel violated the rights of the detainee shall be penalized of 10 years of imprisonment under their custody as provided for Section 23, 29, and 30 of this act. So binanggit kanina. So ito, sa mga lalabag na mga law enforcement or military personnel sa mga nabanggit kanina, sila rin pwede receive ng mga kulong. So 10 years of imprisonment para sa kanila. Section 32, official custodial logbook and its content. The suspected individuals commit any of the acts defined in Section 4 up to Section 12. Section 4 up to Section 12 is defined kanina kung ano yung mga terrorism. Has been placed in detention shall keep a securely and orderly maintained logbook, which is hereby declared as a public document and open to and made available for inspection and scrutiny of the lawyer of the person under custody or any member of his or her family relative up to 4th degree of consanguinity or affinity, even his or her physicians, at the time of the day or night, subject to reasonable restriction by custodial facility. So, kailangan may logbook. The law enforcement custodial unit who failed to comply with the preceding paragraphs to keep an official logbook shall suffer the penalty of imprisonment of 10 years. So again, dun sa mga law enforcement or military personnel, kung sino man yung in charge doon sa suspected individual, kailangan nakakomply siya doon sa official logbook. Kung hindi, siya yung makukulong. So 10 years. Siya din makukulong. 10 years of imprisonment for him or her. Section 33, no torture or coercion in investigation and interrogation. So very self-explanatory, the use of torture and other cruel treatment or punishment as defined in Section 4 and 5 of Republic Act 9745, otherwise known as the Anti-Torture Act of 2009, at any time during the investigation or interrogation of the detained suspected terrorist is absolutely prohibited and shall be penalized under the said act. Again, very self-explanatory. Bawal ang torture. Hindi mo pwedeng torturein para makuha yung sagot or para paaminin or para sabihin niyang, oh, ako may kasalanan. So, and military personnel, law enforcement agent, anyone in charge of the detainee or the suspect, they cannot engage in any cruel act or torture against the suspect or the detainee. Section number 34, restriction on the right to travel. The suspected individuals who commit any form of terrorism. So terrorism, again, defined in section 4 to 12, has restrictions on rights to travel. So hindi sila pwede basta saan magpunta. So kapag sila ay suspected, masasabi natin kung parang nasa watch list sila. Some can even leave their municipalities. Some can even leave their province or usually they can't leave the country. So the investigating prosecutor shall apply for the issuance of precautionary hold departure order or PHTO. So may order para ma-hold yung kanilang travels. So, ang daling i-apply nito pagka mayroon kang passport. So, talaga hindi ka makakapangibang bansa kapag ikaw is suspected of terrorism. So, yung PHTO against the respondent upon the preliminary determination of probable cause in the proper regional trial court. So, hindi naman basta-basta sinabi mong, suspected ka na terrorism. Suspected si ganito. So, let's hold their departure. Hindi na sila makapag-travel. So, hindi. So, may process pa rin siya. So, dadaan siya sa regional trial court and also the prosecutor shall apply with the court having jurisdiction for the issuance of a hold against the accused. So, yun nga. Kailangan dadaan sa korte. Kailangan, yun nga, may probable cause. Of course, the probable cause in this case is act of terrorism. Section number 34. The application shall be accompanied by the complaint affidavit and its attachments, personal details, passport number, and photograph of the accused if available. So hindi naman pwedeng sabihin mo lang si Juan de la Cruz, he is prohibited from traveling because of an act of terrorism. So hindi. So kailangan may mga attachments. So kailangan complete yung information, personal details, pangalan, address, very self-explanatory. Passport number, yan, napakahalaga kasi again sa travel abroad, if noted yung passport number nila or passport, even the photograph, madaling ma-determine na hindi sila dapat makaalis. The suspected individual may also be placed under house arrest by order of the court. Usually, ito yung sa residence lang nila. While he or she was under house of arrest, he or she cannot use telephone, cell phone, emails, computer, the internet, or other means of communication with the people outside the residence until otherwise ordered by the court. So yung house arrest, hindi lang basta nakatambay ka lang sa bahay, pwede kang mag-Facebook, pwede kang mag-chat, text, call, kung kanina-kanina. So, ordered by the court, pwedeng gantong kalala yung hindi ka makaalis ng bansa. Although hindi ka nakakulong sa kulungan, nakakulong ka sa sarili mong bahay to stop you from traveling. Also, otherwise kung order ng court na pwede na, hindi ka pwedeng gumamit again ng communication from to other people using telephones, as mentioned, cell phone, emails, computer, etc. Usapan natin ngayon, Anti-Terrorism Council. Ito yung ATC na binabanggit kanina. The Anti-Terrorism Council is hereby created. The members of ATCR. So ito yung mga current member ng ATC ngayon, although hindi ko alam kung may pagbabago na ba, but as of 2020, as of the act was effective or implemented July 18, 2020, as I remember. So here are the members. Salvador Medialdea. Hindi ko alam yung pronunciation sa pangalan. But He is executive secretary who shall be its chairperson, also can designate individuals and organizations as terrorists without any hearing as long as it sees probable cause that they attempt to commit, or are part of a conspiracy to commit acts defined and penalized as terrorism under the sections 4 to 12 of the law. So again, uh, napakahalaga ng sections 4 to 12 no kasi doon naka-define yung kung ano ba yung act of terrorism. So yung mga yung powers ng executive secretary. So kahit wala ng hearing, as long as nakikita may probable cause about sa terrorism nga under section 412, they can be defined and penalized as an act of terrorism. Hermogenes Esperon Jr., National Security Advisor, who shall be its vice chairperson and advisor to a national government on matters of security. Eduardo Año, the Secretary of the Interior and Local Government, Secretary ng DILG. So responsible for promoting peace and order, ensuring public safety, and strengthening the capability of local government units to effectively deliver basic services to the citizenry. Carlos Dominguez, the Secretary of Finance, responsible for the management of the government's financial resources. Menardo Guevara, the Secretary of Justice, and acts as the principal law agency and legal counsel of the government. It serves as the government's prosecution arm and administers government's criminal justice system by investigating crimes, prosecuting offenders, and overseeing the correctional system. Next is Gregorio Honasan, the Secretary of Information and Communication Technology, responsible in the primary policy planning, coordinating, implementing, and administrative entity of the executive branch of the government that will plan, develop, and promote the national ICT development agenda. Mel Georgie Raquel, Executive Director of Anti-Money Laundering Act. AMLC is an independent government agency committed to combating money laundering and helping preserve integrity of the financial system. Since na-mention yung anti-money laundering, ano nga ba yung anti-money laundering? Google natin. Alamin muna pala natin ano yung money laundering. So ito, concealment of the origins of illegally obtained money, typically by means of transfers involving foreign bank or legitimate business. So, sa madaling sabi, tinatago mo yung pinanggalingan ng pera mo. Kasi nga, illegally obtained siya. CHR, sikat na sikat ngayon dahil sa war on drugs, the Commission on Human Rights. The Commission on Human Rights shall give the highest priority to the investigation and prosecution of violations of civil and political rights of a person in relation to the implementation of this act. So, again, commission sila sa human rights, so in charge sila sa human rights. So, sila yung pwedeng mag-investigate, mag-prosecute dun sa mga may violations sa human rights. The NSTP student can also be active to maintain the peacefulness and general welfare and to protect their lives and also their family from terrorism. The NSTP students should become more critical thinkers once the government abuse their power to implement this act. So, as a finale, this gives us advice. We should do our part as well, although we're still students. Dapat may part tayo sa pagpoprotekta sa terrorism. We as a student, of course, first of all, we should not engage in terrorism. Kailangan nag-spread din tayo ng awareness regarding peacefulness, general welfare. Siyempre, hindi lang para sa atin, para din sa mga mahal natin sa buhay at sa pamilya. Dapat maging critical thinkers din tayo. So baka mamaya inaabuso na ng gobyerno yung kapangyarihan nila, wala pa tayong ginagawa. Hindi man sinasabi sa atin na hindi man sinasabi dyan na magprotesta tayo or lumaban tayo agad-agad sa government. It's just that dapat ina-analyze din natin yung nangyayari. Nag-iisip din tayo. Uh, hindi lang basta sa English nga sabi nila, should not blindly follow. So, hindi dapat parang bulag na nagbubulag-bulagan tayo. So again, sana nagets natin kung ano yung terrorism. And as an NSTP student, we should also share this information with others. Napakadaling mag-share. Social media is the best place to share information. And I hope that we all understood our rights and as well as what we should and should not do with regards to terrorism. So thank you for listening.